us for a voyage through time aboard the largest liner of them all, the Queen Elizabeth. Built at Clydeside, Scotland and launched in 1938, RMS Queen Elizabeth was running mate to the renowned Queen Mary. Unlike her sister ship, however, the Lizzie's first outing was a secret 3,000-mile dash across the North Atlantic in camouflage grey during World War II. After the war, she underwent a complete refit and embarked upon her first commercial voyage as one of the world's fastest and most luxurious passenger ships. In a glamorous age of travel, she attracted the patronage of royalty and the rich and famous. They included Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, Charlie Chaplin, and Laurel and Hardy. They were pampered with the very best cuisine and service amidst legendary splendour and elegance. So join us in this look at the fascinating story of the world's largest liner, RMS Queen Elizabeth. As far back as the late 1920s, Sir Percy Bates, chairman of the Cunard line, introduced the concept of a two-ship weekly service across the Atlantic carrying primarily passengers and mail. Previously, 3 ships had been operated to achieve the same service, but Sir Percy pioneered the introduction of the superliner, a vessel which would be the largest and fastest ever built. The first of the 2 new giant Cunarders was the Queen Mary. She was launched in 1934 and embarked on her maiden voyage to New York in 1936, receiving what was probably the biggest and noisiest welcome ever given by the port. From the mid-1940s, Cunard's queens ruled the North Atlantic. Although the Mary was officially faster and holder of the Hales Trophy for the fastest round trip, the Lizzie, as she was affectionately known, at 1,031 feet, with her distinct 2-funnel profile, was the largest ship in the world. The 2 queens won many friends and admirers, passenger lists boasting, among other names, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. The Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and many a celebrity. This was the heyday of post-war liner travel. Transatlantic crossings were still mainly by sea, and the Cunard sister ships were seen as the only way to cross. But by the late 1960s, with increasing numbers of passengers opting to fly rather than sail the Atlantic, Cunard's queens were to be pensioned off. It was originally planned that the Queen Elizabeth would be running mate to the newest Cunarder, the QE2, when she came into service in 1969, but it was later decided that both Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, which were by now running at a substantial loss, would be sold. Cunard would concentrate on their new ship. The Mary was the first to go, having been purchased by the city of Long Beach, California. She departed from Southampton for the last time on the 31st of October 1967. As often as possible, the captains of the Queens sailed as close as they dared, as the 2 mighty ships passed in mid-Atlantic. This was an unofficial treat that passengers enjoyed, weather permitting, captured here on amateur film shortly before the demise of the two-ship service. The very last occasion the ships met was an emotional moment, and special messages were sent by each of the captains. In 1968, the Lizzie was also sold, eventually destined to become the Seawise University, and then disaster. The construction of job number 552, the reference given to the project to build a second Cunard superliner by the John Brown shipyard at Clydebank, began in December 1936 with the laying of the first keel plates. Although largely similar to the Queen Mary, the Elizabeth was by no means the same as her running mate. John Brown, namesake and former managing director of the John Brown Yard, played an important part in the ship's design.
There were developments because they had decided that bigger and more powerful boilers could be fitted and fewer of them, which allowed us to reduce the number of boilers to the extent that we only required 2 funnels, updates to 2 funnels, which provided additional space in the tween decks for accommodation and on the superstructure for additional public room space. The other big difference, which one can see now on the profile of the ships, while the Queen Mary had huge boiler room ventilators, cowl ventilators in the superstructure, in the Elizabeth we cut these out and we relied on grills on the side of the funnel casings for intake of the air, so that we very much cleaned up the profile of the ship, the top superstructure appearance.
As the ship took shape, all the necessary components were produced and prepared for installation. Thousands of items were made locally, whilst others arrived from across Britain and overseas. From the 10 million rivets to the 140-ton rudder with its own inspection door, the boilers and equipment, and of course the decorative works of art, soft furnishings, furniture, tableware, and much more besides. The Queen Elizabeth was to be like a small floating village. By the autumn of 1938, number 552 was ready to be launched. The scheduled date was the 27th of September, and the ceremony was to be carried out by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, consort of George VI. An estimated 250,000 turned out to watch the Queen christen the world's largest liner. Accompanying her was Princess Elizabeth, who in turn would one day perform a similar task when naming the QE2. Under normal circumstances, the fitting out, which took 14 months, would be followed by sea trials. However, this would not be possible